We start underwater, as elite rescue diver Jonas Taylor tries to save the crew of a damaged nuclear submarine, when suddenly, something massive seems to ram the hull, and though he orders his team back to the ship, not all of them can get back in time, and Jonas is soon forced to leave their butts behind, as the vessel then implodes worse than the Ocean Gate sub a few weeks back. Naturally, fellow survivor Dr. Heller thinks he was just selfishly saving his own arse by leaving his team in there to die. But poor Jonas reckons he saw something monstrous down there. And he don't mean Amy Schumer in scuba gear. Anyway, 5 years later, billionaire Jack Morris meets Dr. Minwei Zhang on the Manor 1 research station, and is introduced to his marine biologist daughter Su-in and her own kid Mei-ying. And they soon descend into the underwater levels, where rich guy Jack says that's not something you see every day. Well, not unless you work at SeaWorld, I guess. Anyway, we're then introduced to the main cast, including Chief Engineer and Sub-Designer Jax, the aforementioned Medical Officer Dr. Heller, Token Brother DJ what pilots the Remote Explorers, and Captain Mac the Station Boss. And Dr. Zhang says that all of Jackie Boy's billions what he's previously invested has gone into this super secret mission, which is to explore what could be the deepest section of the Mariana Trench, what he thinks is concealed by a freezing cold thermocline of hydrogen sulfide, which roughly translates to a blanket cloud of mist and sheet. Anyway, the Origin mission submersible is piloted by Taylor's ex-wife Laurie, a fat-ass Scandinavian known only as the Wall, and a specky Asian soy boy called Toshi. And the boffins soon prove their fanciful yet expensive hypothesis when they discover what they once thought was the seabed is indeed just a vaporous mist. Kinda like the layer of dust on my bedroom floor where I ain't seen the carpet in years. And they find a whole new world of never before seen flora and fauna below the thermocline. But suddenly, the crew are attacked by a giant mass on the sonar. And although Mission Control and the Token Brother are totally baffled at what it could be, Laurie just shouts about her ex-hubby Jonas being right all along, before connection to the Origin crew is lost completely. So the gang soon regroup for crisis talks, and reveal that the Origin lot only have 18 hours of life support down there, so they need a rescue mission pronto. But everyone is too cucked to try and save 3 clowns 6 miles down, so they turn to the only bloke what's ever successfully done it before, aka elite rescue diver Jonas Taylor. You know, the bloke who Dr. Heller reckons was suffering from pressure-induced psychosis because he said a giant monster was trying to eat the nuclear sub he was on, which then made him leave all his mates down there to die? Well, he initially refuses the offer to do another rescue mission at the bottom of the friggin' ocean, but soon changes his mind when they tell him his ex-wife is down there and now giving him all sorts of compliments, because he never thought he'd see the day when a woman admitted a man was right about everything. LOL! So they hot-tail it back to the base, where marine biologist Su Yin has had enough of waiting around for a British bald bloke to maybe put his finger out and agree to a rescue mission, and impatiently goes down to save them all herself, whilst her little daughter Mei Ying just watches her mummy totally abandon her Asian ass. Bruh. Anyway, Jonas then meets the crew, and soon gets debriefed by Jax the chief engineer who also designed the station. And before you can say, too bad she can't design a decent haircut, Dr. Heller reluctantly signs him off, despite still thinking he's a mentally ill coward who's just going to get his mates all killed again. And after bonding with an Asian 8-year-old and promising her he'll totally save her Asian mummy, he finally heads on down under the water, as Su Yin reaches the Origin and tries to dock, but her own sub is soon sucked off by a giant squid. And it looks like it's curtains for the impatient Asian what loves getting sucked off by giant squids. But luckily, said giant squid is then munched up by a giant fuck-off shark. And Jonas gives Dr. Heller the biggest ever I told you so over the radio. Anyway, the Baldy Brit tells her to blow her tanks and go back to the surface now that her sub is wrecked and she can't do anything more. Which she totally does, and before you can say, well, that was a giant waste of time then, Jonas docks with the Origin and starts saving the crew. But that naughty shark soon comes back looking for seconds before they can all board the sub. So naturally, that specky Asian fella does one of them self-sacrifice things. And it looks like it's curtains for the specky Asian what loves doing self-sacrifice things, as the others soon return to the surface, where Su Yin promptly bollocks poor Jonas for leaving someone behind yet again, even though neither time was really his fault. And even Dr. Heller eventually apologises to him, and he says he'll totally save his injured wife Laurie to make up for the 5 years of slander and calling him a nutjob in his official reports and shit. Later, Su-yin also apologises to the surprisingly ripped Baldy Brit for snapping earlier, and then lingers around for a bit to perv on him in the shower.
Nice.
Whilst up on the bridge, the crew then explain that the naughty shark what attacked them earlier was actually an ancient apex prehistoric predator called the Megalodon. And because it was thought to have been extinct for over 2 million years, they now call it a living fossil. And before you can say, that's no way to talk about Dick Van Dyke, most of them just want to yeet its arse despite billionaire Jack Morris wanting to study it and stuff. Whilst little Mei Ying thanks elite rescue diver Jonas Taylor for living up to his promise and totally saving her impatient Asian mummy. Later, said little Mei Ying is off playing in the halls, when suddenly, that Meggy fella appears looking for a Chinese appetiser. And before you can say, Asians are friends, not food, the gang all race downstairs when they feel it attack the station, and soon realise that the giant fuck-off prehistoric shark what should have died off 2 million years ago has totally followed them home.
No way!
Naturally, the token brother wonders how all this is possible, given marine expert Su-yin assured them it can't get through the freezing cold thermocline thing. But shockingly, Jack soon reveals that when their sub returned to the surface, it momentarily left a warm corridor through said thermocline layer, in which the crafty shark totally escaped through. Or some shit. A little later, and they find a bunch of boats that have been munched up by that naughty Meg fella. So Dr. Zhang comes up with a plan, which is to grab some spear guns and shoot the sodding thing in a vulnerable area with some lethal cocktail darts. But whilst they cook up said lethal cocktail darts, billionaire Jack Morris suggests first tagging it with a tracking device so it can't sneak up on them anymore, nor traumatise little Asian girls in front of giant windows and shit. But unfortunately, the spear guns only have a limited range, so some poor fucker's gonna have to swim out close enough to pop a cap in its arse. Or fin, I guess. So naturally, alpha male Jonas Taylor totally volunteers for the gig, and soon tags his arch nemesis in the dorsal fin. But that just pisses off the prehistoric shark royally, and he soon starts chasing the Baldy Brit through the sea, cause he reckons that coming into his home and shooting small darts into his upper dorsal fin just ain't fucking on, son. Luckily, main character Jonas totally escapes the giant fuck-off shark by the power of plot armour. And a little later, Dr. Zhang has finally finished cooking up the poison cocktail, whilst Chief Engineer Jax, who's now thankfully wearing a beanie to cover up her terrible haircut, has cooked something up herself. Mainly an unbreakable shark cage from where they can inject said lethal poison from whilst underwater. And before you can say, this'll end well, marine biologist Su-yin, who Jonas now has a raging boner for, insists on doing all this herself. But as resident alpha male with a fuck ton of testosterone what he doesn't quite know what to do with, he pleads to go instead. But she just says sod that, because you've already done a badass heroic dive today, so let some other nutters have a go and shut up about it already. So after that wall fella attracts the Meggy boy by chucking some chow overboard and thereby finally doing something in this film, marine biologist Su-yin totally succeeds in injecting the poison, but unfortunately, the unbreakable cage totally lives up to its name by being unbreakable whilst the Meg tries to munch her up. But also, unfortunately, he's now trying to swallow her whole. So this Jonas Taylor fella, what loves leaving people behind whenever he gets in the sea, dives in after her when the crane snaps and it threatens to drag her down to Davy Jones's locker. And once he somehow breaks through the bottom of the unbreakable cage just in the nick of time, the Meg succumbs to the poison also in the nick of time. Once she recovers from the embarrassment of it being the second time today she's had to be saved by a Baldy Brit from under the waves, Jonas tells Su-yin that he's totally owned that naughty fishy what keeps harassing her. Because after all, he's the only hairless beast what's going to eat her out around here. And for a moment, it looks like everything's been resolved barely an hour in. But in a shocking twist what no one could ever see coming, the dopey wall fella falls into the sea and attracts a second Meggy fella, which then totally capsizes their boat and shit. And after billionaire Jack Morris saves the token brother from drowning, given the one character who can't swim in this film is a black guy because reasons and also lazy racialism, Captain Mac, who I honestly forgot was even a thing in this film, helps rescue a mortally wounded Dr. Zhang. before the naughty shark comes back for round 2. So Dr. Heller takes a leaf from Toshi's book and also does a self-sacrifice thing, but newly rescued Jax can barely muster a smile given it's now ruined her fancy haircut.
Bruh.
So the crew soon regroup on 2 recovered lifeboats, whilst rich guy Jack gets his mercs to tag the second Megalodon and get it off their backs, as poor Dr. Zhang says goodbye to his daughter, what keeps getting stranded underwater, before totally succumbing to his wounds. And after telling little Mei Ying the bad news, and that her granddad just got crushed by a giant boat what was ran by a second giant shark what they stupidly and recklessly let loose the other day, Su Yin cries about it all to Jonas, given he can totally relate to having people you're fond of die on a boat. Whilst totally honest billionaire Jack Morris tells the station crew that he's now informed the relevant governments about the discovery of that once dead fish what keeps doing a bunch of bad things and also racist hate crimes against defenceless Asian girls. And the Chinese government are totally coming out to blow it to Kingdom Come, and they'll all be evac'd in the morning. He, however, is getting the heck out of Dodge tonight, but turns out he secretly ordered some bombs to sort out the problem given how many lawsuits he's inevitably going to get with every death and injury. And before you can say, please tell me he's not going to bomb the station crew to eliminate the witnesses and totally do a crafty cover-up, we cut back to the infirmary, where ex-wife Laurie and also little Mei Ying gives Jonas their blessings to totally stick it on that Asian bird what keeps giving him a raging lob on. Meanwhile, back out at sea, Jack and his mercenary goons think they've exploded the monster real good and proper, but soon discover it's just some pussy old whale what they've blown to Kingdom Come, and they all then get attacked and munched up by the Meg 2.0. The next morning, the gang come to realise that totally honest billionaire Jack Morris didn't actually call anyone to come save their dopey asses before he jumped on a chopper and fucked off. So Jax hacks into Morris's satellite tracking system to find that naughty fishy what his goons tagged earlier, who's now heading toward China's packed Sanya Bay and planning to treat himself to an all-you-can-eat buffet, though this time with delicious human balls. So marine biologist Su Yin comes up with a plan to lure it away from the beach, by using underwater shark sounds to mimic their mating calls, and just hoping that fishy fella's in heat and too much of a Megalodon to tell the difference. Whilst Jonas plays Pimp My Submersible by making moderations to his sub. Anyway, that Meggy fella what loves munching people up soon gets back to his old tricks and starts munching people up. So our heroes deploy the sexy sonar and totally lure the horny fucker over to their location. And after a farcical final face-off with that fishy fella, Jonas also sets himself up to do a self-sacrifice thing, given it seems to be the new trend around here, by suicidally confronting the prehistoric beast face to face, before ripping a hole in its guts with his sub's modified fin blade. And naturally, this pisses the ancient fish right off, and the Meg then goes all out to try and munch him up. But elite expert diver Jonas Taylor was totally prepared for that, and slaps on a face mask and goggles and swims out, before sticking a spike in its eye and totally besting the brute. And it looks like it's curtains for this Megalodon fella what just wanted revenge for them killing its mate earlier and also for shooting darts at it all the time. But unfortunately, all that blood and guts leaking from his foe totally attracts a swarm of smaller sharks. And it also looks like it's curtains for the Baldy Brit what just killed a second member of an endangered species. But luckily, marine biologist Su Yin, what always has to be saved by said genocidal Brit, totally returns the favour and saves him instead. Huzzah! And we end with everyone toasting to being alive after discovering a giant fuck-off shark species from back when the dinosaurs were around is totally still around, as Jonas makes more flirty eyes with Su Yin and practically tells little Mei Ying that although she may have lost her grandpa today, she'll now gain a new daddy and probably a new brother when he gets balls deep in her Asian mummy tonight. For some shit. And that's it. That's the movie. But man, although the sight of Jason Statham fighting a giant fuck-off shark is now finally ticked off my bucket list, this was a little disappointing. I mean, there were like 5 different helicopters in this film, and not one of them was snatched out of the air by said giant fuck-off shark. Liberties! Though my favourite part was when chief engineer and terrible actress Jax got totally saved from being munched up. And luckily, her face was already soaked, so the actress didn't have to bother trying to do her one job and squeeze out a tear after some fella literally gave up his life for hers. But anyway, that's a plot and that's your lot. Considering in that mail thing so you don't miss any future recaps. Tell me if you like this flick in the comments if you have time, and I'll see you in the next one.